right, we're now joined by Zach Gelb, Infinity Sports. Appreciate your time. So, hey, have you noticed, Zach? I know we're going to get into college football. These baseball playoffs have been a little testy.
Yeah, I was at the Met game last night, so that was just ridiculous being a Met fan. I'm wearing the Met shirt today, so all thrilled with Francisco Lindor. Skubal with the Tigers has been incredible, and even if they lose today, you have him in your back pocket for Game 5 going back to Cleveland. The Padres and Dodgers hate each other. The fans in LA are ridiculous, and then the Padres, deservedly so, don't like Ken Rosenthal anymore, and then the Yankees are just trying to not find a way to gag this series away up against the Royals and mess it up in order to get to the World Series in what is perceived to be an easy road for them. So it's been awesome.
Did you hear about Rosenthal?
Oh, yeah. They're not happy with
Padres
Ken.
are pissed at
him.
They're
happy. Zach,
you know what? Rosenthal, by the way, is going to be like Matt Rule and Smokey now after Smokey went to Nebraska and couldn't get a victory. Matt made it give him the cold shoulder.
Yeah, he did not return my text. He did not return my text after somehow they won against Rutgers.
By the way, Zach, as a Met fan, we were watching the game last night, and when Edwin Diaz came in, I know that it was an adventure, like the walks and that. But when he enters the game, is there ever been a better pop for an entrance of a closer than Edwin Diaz?
Mariano Rivera, I would say, with Enter Sandman.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's when they play Timmy Trumpets, that building goes crazy. But then after the first two batters, everyone's like, oh, they should have delayed that a little bit and kept Peterson in. But then he ended up getting the job done. So better to be him than Emmanuel Clase or Williams, who ended up having some unfortunate moments earlier on in the postseason.
Yes, Narco, right? That's the song.
There you go.
Yeah, Smokey, just don't get on the Mets bandwagon. Things are finally going good for us. We don't need your mush.
There you go. Good call, Zach. Good call.
Stay away.
Zach, it was an adventurous week last week. I know there's games now to look forward to, like Ohio State and Oregon, but I must get your thoughts on Vanderbilt and Alabama. I mean, they've had all their victory laps the last few days and a lot of the pats on the back, but how did you take that last week watching that unfold?
So whenever we say there's going to be a down weekend in college football, no such thing exists. And I said this all on my show last week. Everyone's telling me, oh, it's a down weekend. It's a down weekend. I go, that ends up being the best weekend of college football every single year because all this unexpected stuff does happen. I still can't believe it. Like, even when I say it on the air all throughout the week, Vanderbilt beat Alabama, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I saw my Temple Owls once, go down to Vanderbilt. I think it was like 2014 or 2015 and beat Vanderbilt. So we know how bad that program has been. And to beat Georgia and have that emotional high when you're Alabama, the moment, Kalen DeBoer, Jalen Milroe, they've arrived, right, with Ryan Williams too. And then to lay the egg the following week, I can't believe it. The game, Vanderbilt, I know people are like, oh, well, Alabama was hungover from the Georgia victory. To me, it was just Vanderbilt dominating the time of possession and just taking it to that Alabama defense. Because when the Alabama offense was on the field, they were fine. They were more than fine. So that, to me, was the big difference of the game. But definitely give credit to Vanderbilt for a program win that will last a lifetime.
We hear that the regular season is not going to matter. And then we also just saw why you have a playoff, because you never know, right? With the whoever gets in a game like that. How many mulligans does Alabama have left? One? I think this year, though, I didn't think before the season you could get in with 3 losses. How many ugly losses there have been earlier in the season? You're going to be uncomfortable if you have 3 losses, but maybe there's a window to get in with how many of these teams end up playing one another, and we didn't think would have losses at this time of the year. But if you have more than 2 losses, I would not expect fully to get into the playoffs. I think they have one more mulligan in them, and we'll see when that ends up being used.
Zach, with that, last weekend, I think we're starting to see for the first time in college football, because of the transfer portal, because of that, like the effects of parity. Like, there is actual parity now. Now it's not like the NFL or that when it comes to it, but Alabama's at risk. Georgia's at risk. These teams that used to be able to phone in games and still win them, that's probably over for the foreseeable future, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's also a faceless sport right now. Like, And what I mean by that is for years, Nick Saban, right, was the face of the sport. And I think most people think it's Kirby Smart right now, but he just doesn't really register to me as a face of the sport guy. Now, you go win a few more national championships, right? We know he's the king right now in college football, but there's like an identity that people are just waiting to see who's going to take and run with that identity in college football right now. And his team didn't perform well up against Kentucky. And then I know they had a good second half up against Alabama, but I'm not giving them any credit in terms of, okay, you still lost the game. Like some people are going out of their way. Oh, it was a great effort. Oh, it shows how they're a great team. Yeah. A championship program shouldn't go down without a fight when they're getting their teeth kicked in. Eventually they're going to show up. So this is wide open. And I was not a fan of going from 4 to 12. I would think you maybe go to 6 or 8 max. I know why it ends up getting done, and it's all about the money. But I kind of compare it to the play-in tournament in the NBA, where I don't love extending, the 9th and the 10th seed an invite to go up against the 7th and the 8th seed. But it ended up working because of the fact that the stars of the NBA ended up getting those 7th and 8th and 9th and 10th spots. And it provided some juice when you see Steph Curry and LeBron in there. And this year, it's working out because you have a lot of teams that are going down that were not expected to go down, and it creates that intrigue.
A couple of playoff contenders and a big one in the Big Ten. Zach, the biggest game on paper in the country this week, Ohio State at Oregon, first Big Ten meeting between these two. What's your excitement level for Ducks and Bucks?
Very high, because for Ohio State, it's like weird to say there's nothing to win for them in this game, but it's championship or bust with them. But if they end up losing this game, the response on Sunday and Monday is going to be great. And for Oregon, it's an opportunity to restore belief for people that had a high level of belief in this program before the start of the season. Then we're like, didn't like how they looked against Idaho. Didn't like how they look up against Boise State. So this is an opportunity where Oregon and Dan Lanning can go get a big boy victory and show people, okay, that talk about us before the season being a national championship contender, that is legit. And then the Ohio State side, even though you won't get universal praise for a victory here, it gives that group a little confidence that, okay, this year it's different than what it's been the last few years where we've been good, but we haven't been great like we're expected to be.
So Dion and Colorado host K-State.
Great game.
Late at night, everyone can kind of get lubed up throughout the week or the day or have their food and drinks or whatever. I can't wait for this game. I really am intrigued because we've seen a little difference in Colorado. We don't know for sure, but they have looked better the last couple of weeks.
And Chris Kleiman is one of the more underrated coaches in the country. And I've stopped trying to predict the Big 12 at this point because it reminds me, I know there's been some crossover with some teams of the Pac-12 for the last 5-6 years. Whenever a team people fell in love with, the next week or two, they would end up losing. And now we've seen that multiple times this year in the Big 12. But with the performance that Coach Prime and Shador and Travis had up against UCF, where they were a double-digit underdog and they won that game outright going away, now you get a bigger test here. And it's like, okay, let's see how far they could take it. Because even if, you don't like Colorado or you love them, they are a fun storyline, and they have 2 players who are going to be top 10 picks, maybe even 2 players who are going to be top 5 picks in the NFL draft. And I like the entertainment factor. I like the excitement factor of Colorado, even though at times it could get a little obnoxious. But I think the sport's in a better spot when you have Shador, Coach Prime, and Travis taking advantage of these opportunities. And you did a good job on one test. Now people are wondering, okay, taking Colorado seriously, they should be a bowl game, should be a bowl team this year, but how far can now they take it?
Zach, do you think that USC can score on Penn State?
Yes, and here's why. Because everyone to this point is out on USC. And USC is one of those teams where they are a roller coaster ride. And they're not like a great roller coaster ride, but they're like a solid, good roller coaster ride where there's going to be some ups, there's going to be some downs. And when you walk away, you go, do I need to do that again? No. But if I had to, I would. That's kind of USC football this year. And no one's going to give them a chance, I think, up against Penn State. I have not liked what I've seen up against Penn State outside of West Virginia. Since then, I don't like the way that they've been playing in the first halves of a lot of these games. Even last week, You go back to the Bowling Green game, the Illinois game. I know they pulled away late, but it was sloppy. So I think USC has a chance, but if Penn State doesn't win this game, and James Franklin's allergic to the big game, and I don't even consider this a big game. They better win this game. It really shows you how open college football is, because the fact that Penn State right now is the fourth best team in the country, they don't feel like the fourth best team in the country. So they better not lose this one.
Does Texas feel like the best team in the country?
Right now, yes. I would say Texas is 1, and I would put Ohio State 2, and then Oregon gets the 3 spot, but I would still put Alabama 4 and Georgia 5. I think those are the 5 best teams in the country. Miami, very good. Had to come from behind up against Cal, which I didn't think they'd be down 25 points, and I thought that game was over. Clemson now gets a little bit intriguing, but I still find Dabo insufferable, and I'm just rooting for them to lose. And then, you give a little credit to Penn State and just hope that Penn State doesn't go the way of what happened with Ole Miss and Missouri and Tennessee with what we've seen. But I still think those 5 teams, Texas 1 right now, Ohio State 2, Oregon 3, Alabama 4, and then Georgia in at 5.
Why do you find Dabo insufferable? He seems like a breath of fresh air to me.
Yeah. Accountability. Okay. I'm an accountability guy. Dabo is not an accountability guy.
Yeah. No,
Zach. He's an FSU guy. He hates Dabo.
Yeah.
No, I'm just surprised that he showed up for this interview then, because FSU hasn't showed up to the season. And I love Norvell, but geez.
They're speaking Paul's love language a little bit, though.
This turned on you quickly.
No, listen, look, I can take the lumps. I dish it right back out to them. They've disappointed me wholeheartedly, and shocked at how bad it got. I thought they wouldn't be as good. I didn't think they would just be back to the Willie Taggart era all of a sudden. But
you know what it is? The transfer portal, which don't get me wrong, I am pro NIL and I am pro transfer portal. But what we're learning this year with Florida State, the transfer portal is like when you play blackjack at the casino. When the table is hot and everyone's winning, you could go win a lot of money. But eventually, if you build your program solely off of that, the table ends up getting cold and you could lose your money really quickly when playing blackjack. Trust me, many nights at the Atlantic City Casino where I should have walked away and didn't, and ended up walking out with no money in my pocket.
Wow. Hey, what are your thoughts about the Jets? I know you're, with the show you do on Infinity Sports Network, you cover the gamut. What were your thoughts? How much was Aaron Rodgers involved in this? Because he says, not me.
Yeah, so Smokey, we know you're the point person on your network. It would be like if you fired someone and then everyone was like, oh, like your co-hosts were just like, yeah, Smokey never told us, even when he talked to us the day before about it. Like, what are we doing here? Aaron Rodgers had to know. He had a conversation with the owner the night before they fired him. So it's tough for me to believe that Aaron Rodgers had no say. If Aaron Rodgers still wanted Robert Saleh to be the coach, he would still be the head coach of the Jets. The biggest problem with the Jets is 2 things. 1, the offensive line stinks. And number 2, the quarterback is looking like how a 40-year-old quarterback is supposed to look. We've kind of have all got to this point where since Brady did it, everyone's like, oh, quarterbacks can now play until they're 40-something years old, 45 years old.
Yeah.
That's an anomaly with Tom. You're not meant to play football when you're 40 years old coming off an Achilles injury.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Hope you're doing well. And enjoy the playoffs. Maybe, are we going to have a Mets-Yankees series?
I just hope the Mets are there. Whoever we play, I don't really care, but that's been a big talk today here in the streets of New York. Maybe you get Mets-Dodgers or Mets-Padres in the NLCS, and then maybe you end up getting that Met-Yankee World Series. I do think the Yankees will get there. And I'm hoping that this is just one of those magical years with my Mets that people end up writing about, like, how the heck did that team win the World Series? That would be fun.
I tell you what, the Tigers story is unbelievable with what they did at the end. And
how
now,
about
yeah?
So I had Scooble on my show before the deadline, and I'm talking about him about potentially getting traded, and they go on this run. He doesn't get traded. He came back on before the ALDS. Yeah, it was right after the Astros series. So before the ALDS, the one that they're in now. And he was like, yeah, the trade conversations are kind of like funny when you look back at them. And he thought it was a lot of generated from the media. But What the Mets are doing is crazy. What the what the Tigers are doing is crazy. And even to some extent, I know they have a lot of star power, but the Padres, they didn't look like they were going to be there. And now here they are, 1 win away from going to the NLCS, and a dangerous team they are.
That's a much must-watch series with the Dodgers and Padres. Thank you, Zach. Appreciate it, my man.
Yep, you got it, guys. Be well.
Zach Gelb, Infinity Sports Network, with us on Wednesdays. Normally, he covered the Mets game last night, so today with us on Thursday.